It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Hey there, everybody. How we feeling? We hanging in there? I feel like crap, to be perfectly honest with you. I do not feel good. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to yell. I'm just going to be honest with you when I tell you I'm very worried. Okay? I'm very, very, very worried. Ever since the Mets got to Atlanta, played that one listless game, we had to hear about how this team is so different. Don't worry, it's nothing like the past. Then we had to sit through 2 rainouts because Major League Baseball's incompetent and wait for a game. Didn't you just have this creepy feeling deep down that game 1 against the Milwaukee Brewers was somehow going to go this bad? And boy, did it go bad. Hi, by the way. Welcome to a very happy edition of Rico Brogna. We record this right after the New York Mets lost to the Milwaukee Brewers by a final score of 8-4. The Atlanta Braves got brilliant pitching performance by Max Fried and shut out the Kansas City Royals. And we're on recording as the Padres and Diamondbacks are playing. I actually have that game right in front of me. In fact, I'll show you for those watching on YouTube. There you go. See? I'm all over it. With that said, I don't know why. Maybe it's just being a Met fan. Maybe it's a part of the DNA of being negative, the DNA of waiting and dreading really, really bad stuff. As the day started to creep closer and closer to 8:10, and I started writing down the lineup in my scorebook, and I'm like, oh, Jesse Winker's playing right field. Oh, maybe he'll wake up. J.D. Martinez is going to get the DH. Great. Maybe he'll wake up. Francisco Lindor's in the lineup. Hopefully he won't be too compromised. Pete Alonso hitting cleanup. Maybe this is his moment. But as we got closer to 8 o'clock, I can't be alone in saying this. I had this disgusting feeling in my stomach. Something bad was going to happen. And if you sat there the way I did, and you invested 3 hours of your night on a Friday night, the final Friday night of the regular season, can we list the horrible crap we watched for 3 hours? The horrible Nightmare on Elm Street kind of garbage we witnessed that certainly doesn't give you a lot of enthusiasm for Saturday, Sunday, and certainly Monday. Let's start with Rhys Hoskins. Was that not the most predictable thing in the world? I said this on the radio. I said the one guy on the Milwaukee Brewers that scares me is Rhys Hoskins. Because let's not forget, go all the way back to the beginning of this season. Because while we try to ignore March and April and May and act like it's not a part of this season, it's all a part of this season. If the Mets played better baseball in April, really March, and played better baseball in May, maybe they wouldn't be in the situation they're in right now. So when this season began, Jeff McNeil, who's no longer with us, he's not dead, he's just not playing with us anymore because he's injured, had a hissy fit over a clean slide by Rhys Hoskins. Okay, McNeil wants to be fired up. It's opening day. He doesn't like the fact that Hoskins actually slides into second base, and so he has a little fit. Remember that? Go to the archives of the old Rico Brognas. We did a podcast right after that game. Rhys Hoskins then proceeded to beat the living crap out of us for 3 days. You remember that? Rhys Hoskins got the last laugh that entire weekend. He showed guts. He showed balls. The rest of that team did nothing. They very meekly got swept by the Milwaukee Brewers. And maybe we shouldn't care. It was the first series of the year. Why are you talking about it? I'm talking about it because I reminded myself, Rhys Hoskins got guts. Rhys Hoskins killed us over those first 3 games, and he's probably going to do it again. And as that first inning was developing, as Bryce Terang led off with a base hit and then proceeded to run all over Francisco Alvarez as if there was no threat whatsoever to be thrown out trying to steal. And then Minaya had those battles with Contreras and with Adames, and both guys, to their credit, worked walks. And you saw Rhys Hoskins come to the plate with that just weird-looking mustache. I know who am I to criticize someone's facial hair. Speaking of things that happened this season. But as soon as Rhys Hoskins came to the plate with the bases loaded and 2 out, we all know. I mean, We all knew. Like, who in their right mind thought, yeah, Sean Manaea is going to fight his way through this? Nobody thought that. And Rhys Hoskins, of course, gave us the worst possible scenario by hitting a grand slam home run and, let's all be honest, ended this game. You hung in there. You hoped something would change. You hoped the Mets would rally. You hoped that Manaea and the bullpen would settle down and maybe hold them right there at 4. But you knew what I knew. And I felt so awful about myself because my youngest son kept asking me, what's this wrestling move? What's this wrestling move? What's this wrestling move? With it, as he would apply it with his 2 fingers. What's this wrestling move? What's this wrestling move? And I answered him every time. And this was happening as Rhys Hoskins then eventually deposited one into the left field seats. And I was not happy. And I said, Spence, please stop asking me about these moves. I can't talk about this anymore. I didn't scream or anything. I was just like, it's a suplex, kid. I don't know. It's a body slam. I don't know. Basically the same body slam that this New York Met franchise is giving all of us. So they're down 4-0. They get leadoff men on every freaking inning, and they do nothing. And go back to the first inning, the top of the first inning, even before Rhys Hoskins hit that grand slam. This is Pete Alonso's moment. He's had a very mid kind of season for him. I know the back of the baseball card is going to be like, it wasn't that bad. 34 home runs, 88 RBIs, and OPS right near 800. It wasn't that bad. But anyone who's watched him all year long knows it hasn't been great. Hasn't been great. This is his moment, no matter what the final numbers look like, to be the guy and to change the narrative of this season. And so with a runner on first after Lindor starts this game with a well-earned walk, credit to him, and no one's expecting him to steal second with the back issue, Pete Alonso has a 3-0 count. Right there, an opportunity to jump on Frankie Montas, get a 3-0 fat fastball, hit the ever-loving crap out of it, give this team an early lead, and give us the hope that Pete Alonso is going to wake up. And he swings 3-0, and he taps it to shortstop. And that should have been, even before the Hoskins grand slam, even before the JD double play an inning later, even before all the other stuff that we'll get to, that was like torture to watch. That should have been the sign right there of where this game was going. Pete Alonso on a 3-0 pitch right down the middle with a chance to rip one. And he grounds out meekly to shortstop. That really did set the tone. Look, it doesn't help that in the second inning, after down 4-0, and I hate killing Francisco Lindor. How can you? The guy was on base 3 times in this game. He's playing with a bad back. So I'm not killing him. I'm just describing that he made a horrible throw on a ground ball to shortstop. Now, he makes that horrible throw. That doesn't mean necessarily that Sean Manaea ahead of the count has to give up a double to Bryce Terang. It doesn't mean that Tyrone Taylor, another guy who's very tough to kill with the way he's played overall, has to not make what could have been a very nice catch, but ball falls in front of him. He knocks it away. It turns into an extra run. And every run matters. It's 4-0. Game's not over. As much as we feel the game is over, 4-0, you hold them right there. You start tacking runs on 4-1, 4-2. You're back in the game. But before you look up, it's 5-0. And the offense, which no-showed Atlanta, which has gotten eerily quiet at times this season, outside of Mark Vientos. And credit to Mark Vientos. Look, Mark Vientos is the one guy who has shown up in these 2 games, other than the 2-run home run he hits in the third inning, that sort of got him back in the game at 5-2. Where the hell are the bats? Where are they? Brandon Nimmo. And I don't know why this story bothers me so much. And no one really did anything wrong, but it still bothers me. That whole Steve Gelb story from the other day in Atlanta, where Brandon Nimmo says, yeah, we were pressing, man. I had never been so nervous for a series in 2022 against the Braves, but we're better now. But I was pressing. And Pete Alonso telling him, yeah, that team, we didn't have a lot of fun, but we have a lot of fun now. Yeah, They look like they're having a lot of fun. Brandon Nimmo really looks like he learned the lessons of 2022 when he gave you the quietest 1-for-5 you'll ever see. Where the hell is Brandon Nimmo? Jesse Winker? I like the Jesse Winker trade. I'm glad they got Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker certainly killed the Mets a lot over the years. Where the hell has Jesse Winker been the last couple of games? He strikes out on 3 pitches his first time up. He bounces into a back-breaking double play in the 6th inning. I'm glad that, well, it wasn't Mendy because Mendy was ejected. More on that in a few minutes. I'm glad somebody, whoever you think was managing this team, I know it's John Gibbons, but I don't know. Maybe it's Mendy on the phone. Maybe it's Aaron Boone calling up his old friend. I don't know. I'm glad they took Jesse Winker out of the game. And at this point, I don't think I want to see him again. And maybe that's just me being pissed off right now on a Friday night. Maybe I'll get more rational when we're talking about the lineup for Saturday or Sunday. But I'm done looking at him. Where the hell's Jesse Winker been the last week? The corpse of J.D. Martinez. We got the corpse of J.D. Martinez who tells Mendy, I made some adjustments. I'm feeling better. I'm going to break out. And he gives you the weakest 0 for 3. I think the first time up, he did hit the ball hard, and it turned into that double play that Willy Adames kicked. He basically played soccer with it, kicking it to second base. But where the hell's J.D. Martinez? Where's he? They get nothing offensively. Sean Manaea gives you one of the worst performances we've seen since prior to the Chris Sale, I'm watching him, I'm going to become him. Manaea was bad. He threw 1,000,000 pitches early in this game. Jose Butto was the only positive thing we saw, and I agreed with Mendy going to Jose Butto at that point in the 4th inning. Because in the 4th inning of, at that time, a 6-2 game, you still want to give your team a chance to win. You still believe, hey, if we can hold it right there, we have a good enough offense. We know the Brewers aren't going to go to their elite closer, Devin Williams. We don't know how long Frankie Montas is going into this game. Actually, at that point, he was pretty much done because he came out after 4 innings. So I loved. Yeah, I'll use the word love. There's nothing I love tonight. Actually, there is one thing I love tonight. Did you guys hear about that trade? I love that trade. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really love it. I'm like trying to mock Knicks fans. I can't mock you. It's Karl Anthony Towns. They fit well here. I don't know. I can't think about it, to be honest with you. All I know is the Knicks keep getting involved in my team's games. Whether it's the Subway Series and Mikal Bridges taking him from my crappy basketball team to now Julius Randle and Dante for Karl Anthony Towns as the Mets are getting, killed. I mean, I'm confused. I got a headache. I'm trying to figure it all out. Anyhow, I forgot what the hell I was saying. I was saying something that probably didn't make any sense, but that's where I'm at. It's a Friday night. The Mets lost. They're collapsing their season. Like what? It's really not going to make that much sense. Oh, going to Jose Butto. I like going to Jose Butto because you want to at least give yourself a chance. And Butto did great. Butto comes in. He gets a fly out. He pitches a clean next inning. I actually would have gone to him about it earlier. Right after Garrett Mitchell hit that little chopping double over Pete Alonso's head that set them up with 2 men on base, 2nd and 3rd, 4th inning. It's 5-2. I would have gone to Butto right then and there. I would have pulled Sean Manaea. And I wouldn't have pulled him because I'm thinking to myself, let me get him out because I can use him in a couple of days. I think once Manaea pitches through the 3rd inning and Mendy made that decision to keep him in, you're not taking him out early because you're thinking, oh, I could have him available for Monday or Tuesday. I don't think you could play that game. You got guys out of their rhythm anyway. So are you really getting the best out of Sean Manaea if he's pitching on 2 or 3 days rest just because he didn't throw a lot of pitches on a Friday night? No. I think you got to figure out this game. So I would have gone to Butto 1 batter earlier. I would have brought him in to face Jackson Chourio. Mendy doesn't do that. Chourio gets the base hit. It was a rip, and Iglesias made that great play. That's where Iglesias made the diving play, throws to first base. He's clearly safe, and the Mets give you a desperate challenge. But Butto did a good job. The problem was, I think what you're thinking at that point is, how many top-end relievers can I actually go to? Can I just go to all of them on this occasion, hoping the bats are going to wake up? Or at some point, do I make the decision, you know what? I got to save some of my arms for Saturday, Sunday, and then potentially 2 games on Monday. At 6-2 in the 5th inning, at 6-2 in the 6th inning, because the bats didn't do anything, I agreed with Mendy again that I'm going to go to my quote-unquote low-leverage guys. And the low-leverage guys did exactly what you'd expect. They didn't give up 10 runs, but they gave up a run here, a run there. And the Met bats couldn't take advantage of it. Let me go to the Alvarez ejection. Not the Alvarez ejection, the Alvarez strikeout that led to the Carlos Mendoza ejection. There is a reason I wait 16 minutes before I start whining about the umpires. And the reason I wanted to wait, and I wasn't going to start by whining about the umpires, is because let this be crystal clear to everybody, and we should all feel this way. We can bitch about umpiring, which I'm about to do. It is not why they lost this game. It is like 10th on the list. You start with Manaea being ineffective. You continue with Pete swinging 3-0. You get into the bats not getting enough impactful hits. Like, there's a lot of different things you can go through before you legitimately get to De Jesus being a terrible umpire. So we can do that now. I feel like enough time's gone by where we can say that 3-2 pitch to Francisco Alvarez that should have loaded the bases with 2 outs in the 4th inning with the Mets trailing 5-2, and who knows what happens, that was a bullshittery kind of call. It was clearly low. Now, De Jesus, and Keith called this early in the game, because I've heard Keith say this a lot about De Jesus, and he's right. He's got a hot temper. He wants to throw everybody out of games. So Carlos Mendoza, I don't think he's trying to get run, thinking he's going to spark the team. I think he's pissed, just like we all are, because we're all watching the game and we all see that 3-2 pitch was a ball. What does that mean? It means that the game had a chance to look different. You know, I don't know what Tyrone Taylor does. Tyrone Taylor could swing at the first pitch and pop up the shortstop. That's probably what happens. Maybe he rips up a double up the alley and the game looks completely different. But there are so many things that led to that call being so infuriating, one of which being it was a great at-bat by Francisco Alvarez. And Francisco Alvarez had a great at-bat an inning earlier when he drew a leadoff walk in the 3rd inning. He came around and scored on the Vientos home run. So it was frustrating because Alvarez put together this just awesome at-bat. And at that point in the game, you know Frankie Montas isn't long for the world. His pitch count's really high. It's a 5-2 game. Like, the Mets are in the game. And they're building the following inning after the Vientos home run on potentially having another big inning or impactful inning. Even if they don't come back and tie the game, maybe you score a run on a wild pitch. Who the hell knows? Maybe get an infield hit. And maybe instead of 5-2, it's 5-3. Or maybe Taylor hits a grand slam. I don't know. But Ramon De Jesus, who's very bad at his job, made a horrible call. And then was overly aggressive in ejecting Carlos Mendoza. If Carlos Mendoza thought as he was leaving, well, sucks I've been ejected, but maybe I'll spark the team. Maybe I'll fire them up. It didn't work. And I don't usually think those things are connected. I don't think the Mets not hitting after Mendy got ejected means anything. It's just the reality that if that's what he was trying to do, it did not work. Because the Mets did nothing in the 5th inning besides an infield single. They did nothing in the 6th inning besides an infield single. They did nothing in the 7th inning besides a 1-out walk. By the way, none of these cases did a run score. And so they failed to, I guess, build off of anything from the 2-run home run by Mark Vientos to the almost rally before the screwed strikeout of Alvarez to the Mendoza ejection. They did nothing. Now, the 8th inning was a very weird inning. And you're still kind of hanging in there hoping, thinking maybe it's 7-2. The Mets load up the bases with 1 out. They're an extra batter away from getting the tying run to the plate. And then Harrison Bader, who came in the game for Jesse Winker. Now, if they don't do that an inning earlier, bring Bader in for defense, you're pinch hitting for Jesse Winker, but you may be going with Starling Marte as opposed to Harrison Bader. And you could have gone to Starling Marte right then and there And it would have been a waste. You had Bader for 1 inning playing defense. But what's the good of having a guy come in to play defense when you're down by 5 runs and you need to score runs? So I did think about that. I thought about, all right, you cleaned up defense for an inning, but you knew there was a good chance you were going to have to pinch hit for Jesse Winker. You could go Bader Marte, but then you lose that ability to have more improvement in your outfield defense. But hey, you're down by 5 runs. I mean, you got to score runs. And I actually had like this weird positive feeling about Bader when he came up with the bases loaded, because in the back of my mind, I thought, you know what? He's lost his opportunity to play. He doesn't play every day anymore. He hasn't hit in a while, but as he showed us in the past with the Yankees, he does have that knack for big moments. He had a great postseason for the Yankees back in 2022. So I thought, wow, this could be it. You know, it's a good matchup against Holby Milner, the left-hander that came in. I felt decent about Harrison Bader's chances. Falls behind in the count and smokes a ball to left field. And so apropos for this awful, awful game, Jackson Chourio makes this incredible leaping catch. That ball should go off the wall. 2 runs should score instead of 1. And who knows? Again, kind of like the Alvarez could have drew a walk instead of striking out. You just never know where that game goes. And instead, Chourio made a great play. Bader gets robbed. And then the Mets should give it another break because of that little pop-up off of the bat of the mortal J.D. Martinez that somehow gets dropped by Bryce Terang. And so they give it a gift. But it's Luis Torrens instead of Francisco Alvarez, because 1 inning earlier, in like the oddest play you'll ever see, Francisco Alvarez goes to slide into third base on a situation where there is no play. It was a ground ball to shortstop. I guess he thought maybe Adames was going to throw over to third. Alvarez slides and his back locks up, and it looked awful. Fingers crossed that it's not as bad as it looked, but the problem the Mets are going to run into is that they're going to need a catcher. You know, unless Alvarez wakes up tomorrow and everything is perfectly fine, the Mets are going to have to add a catcher to this roster. And they're going to have to add a catcher to the 40-man roster. I'll get into some of the options in a few minutes. But Alvarez gets hurt. It looks awful. I know his defense was bad. I'll get into that later as well. We got a lot to talk about. But it leads, unfortunately, to Luis Torrens coming up with the bases loaded in a situation in which the Mets have now pulled to 7-4. They're in it. They've got a shot. And Torrens swings at the first effing pitch and pops up weakly to right field. Killer. What happens if Alvarez is up? I don't know what Alvarez does, but based on his first 3 plate appearances, he'll give you a quality at bat. He's not going to swing at the first pitch and a lazy fly ball to right field. But that's the reality of Luis Torrens. For as bad as Alvarez was defensively in this game, and he was bad. He was so bad that I'm having the same thought we're all having, which is, how much longer can you play him behind the plate defensively like this? So it was bad. The wild pitches, the stolen bases from jump, no shot at throwing anybody out. Some of that on him, some of that on the pitching. It's not all on Francisco Alvarez. It's really the wild pitches that drive you nuts. The balls in the dirt that you have to block. You can't let these runs score, especially the runs we saw in the 6th inning. The 6th inning was ugly. So I get Torrens is better than Alvarez defensively, significantly. And if the Mets are fortunate enough to be a playoff team, and yeah, I'm going to phrase it that way. If they are fortunate enough to be a playoff team and they're matched up with these bastards from Milwaukee, yeah, Luis Torrens may be your better option just because of the defense. Alvarez isn't going to get as much better as he is, as better as he is offensively than Luis Torrens. Against this team, I mean, you're going to have to be freaking Mike Piazza in his prime to be it worth the defense that you're giving up. But you got a preview of that when Torrens came up in this big spot with the, not bases loaded, I guess it was 2 on, and he pops up weakly on the first pitch. But Francisco Alvarez's defense was atrocious in this game. It was awful. I mean, the way he goes to even block wild pitches, I don't want to say he's lazy because he's not lazy. He works really hard. It looks lazy. And they gave the Brewers way too many extra bases. And think back to the beginning of this game. Did you guys hear what Gary Cohen was saying during the pre? Well, Brewers have nothing to play for. They steal a lot of bases, but are they going to steal a lot of bases? And what happens? In the first inning, Bryce Terang is running all over them. That's why we got to stop with this. There's nothing to play for crap. Here's why that's a fallacy. It's a fallacy for two reasons. Number one, rosters are 28. They're not 40. This isn't 1997 anymore. Yes, with pitching, no doubt, you can handle your pitching staff in a much more conservative way. No doubt about it. The Brewers are not throwing their ace over the weekend. They're not going to pitch Devin Williams in back-to-back games. I get that. And yes, that can impact you or impact us in this case in a positive way. I will totally give you that. But if you're Bryce Terang, you're telling me because you know your team's in the playoffs, yet you're trying to put up stats, you're trying to finish the season strong. You're not taking at-bats off. You're not giving up stolen bases. Not in this day and age. And I don't blame anybody. You play for your stats. So the combination of the idea that professional athletes are going to take the foot off the gas just because they know their team's in the playoffs, combined with the fact that you can't sit everybody because of the rosters, this whole foot off the gas thing, or, they're playing a team that has nothing they're not playing for anything. Well, they're still playing baseball. They're not forfeiting these games. And you clearly saw that tonight. The Brewers are not going to be a pushover. They're not going to be easy. Now, are they thinking about their first-round opponent? Probably not. I don't know if the Brewers care who their first-round opponent is. I think you've got a bunch of young, hungry players who are going to finish strong. Rhys Hoskins comes up with the bases loaded in the first inning. He's not taking an at-bat off. Why would he? The Alvarez injury, though, is scary. It's a back. Obviously, we have a lot of experience with a back lately with Francisco Lindor. It is easy in terms of Luis Torrens will play. Luis Torrens will catch. And the attitude almost has to be whatever you get out of him offensively is a plus. He certainly is a positive defensively and may make sense against Milwaukee because of the fact that their running game is such a part of their offense. I mean, I think we were going to have a discussion either way tonight about Torrens over Alvarez because of how bad Alvarez's defense was and because of how much better Luis Torrens is defensively. But unfortunately, I think that conversation is taking care of itself. If the Mets have to add a catcher to this roster, they're going to have to add somebody to the 40-man. Hayden Senger is a guy who was catching a lot down at AAA. Is that the guy you add? I don't think it matters that much, only because I think the Mets add a catcher, and that guy's not going to play. The only thing you may do if Alvarez is IL'd and is not available is Torrens is your catcher, and if you're desperate late in the game, 8th inning, couple of guys on base, yes, you will go to your bench, you'll pinch hit for him, and then obviously your backup catcher will then come in the game. So that's where the value is. This Diamondback game is also driving me nuts. The Padres lead the Diamondbacks 5-3. Let me explain why that is so important. And it's not just about clinching. It's not just about, hey, I don't want to have to deal with 2 games in Atlanta. What I also don't want to deal with, what you don't want to deal with, is the idea that the Mets have to win 2 games in Atlanta. That is the worst case scenario where this weekend either just doesn't go well or they don't get any kind of help and they've already lost the game and they're forced on Monday to play 2 games and win both of them. And if they lose any one of those 2 games, they're eliminated. That's a worst case scenario. And I cannot imagine how any Met fan in their right, God-loving mind would have confidence in that scenario. We'll take it, I guess, right? We'll hope. We'll cross our fingers. But there is no sane Met fan who would actually say, I like my chances. It's all right in front of us. Are you kidding me? I don't even like my chances in a scenario in Atlanta where they only have to win once. So if the Diamondbacks lose this game, And obviously, if you have downloaded the Rico Brogna, you already know the results. So that's good. But for those live with us on YouTube, if the Diamondbacks lose this game, the Mets are still in a spot where if they can take care of business on Saturday and Sunday, not only is it still possible they can clinch, but if they win Saturday and Sunday and Arizona doesn't win this game, the Mets would be in a spot on Monday where they only have to win once. And that is important because going to Atlanta and having to win twice is horrific. Unfortunately, with the Braves winning and the Mets losing, there is no possible way the Mets could clinch via the Atlanta option. Their only way to clinch before Monday is the Arizona option. They need to gain a game on the Diamondbacks. Obviously, that's not happening tonight. They were trying to avoid not losing a game on the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so that's the goal. The goal is, sure, can they somehow clinch before Monday? But the other goal would be if they have to play on Monday, don't be in a spot where you have to win twice. Now, Pete Hoffman is going to be hosting an overnight show, WFAN. If you're listening live to us, you can listen to him live. If this is all taped and you're listening to the pod in the morning, you can always rewind on the Odyssey app. Pete, as I've been doing the Rico with you, I don't know what Carlos Mendoza has said. Has he announced a starting pitcher for Saturday's game and beyond?
He has announced a starting pitcher for tomorrow, but not beyond. It's Quintana gets to start on Saturday.
I'm okay with that. I think that what I laid out a few days ago was Quintana and potentially Severino or McGill, depending on the scenario, and having David Peterson go into Atlanta. Jose Quintana was always supposed to play the Brewers. He was going to miss the Atlanta series. So no issue with that. Hopefully Quintana can build off of what he's been doing recently. He's in the midst of a scoreless streak, and they freaking need him. They need a strong performance by Jose Quintana because Sean Manaea was awful. They used the kind of back end of their bullpen. And by back end, I don't mean back end. Back end implies the strength of their bullpen. They use the circle of, what did I call it the other day? We have the circle of trust. Oh, the circle of crap. He used the circle of crap part of his bullpen today. And I'm not surprised he's not naming Sunday because I think it is going to be kind of a case-by-case basis. Mendy did say he has no fear of pitching Severino again in Atlanta because that would mean back-to-back starts in Atlanta. He made it seem like we're just going to go day by day and kind of see the standings and see the scenario. We don't know the scenario fully because of the Arizona-San Diego game, but it really doesn't matter. They got to win. So I'm good with Jose Quintana going on Saturday, and then we'll see what he has for Sunday. I think a lot of it's just going to depend on how they do Saturday night, but this was very discouraging. I ain't going to lie to you. I'm not even drunk. This isn't a drunk Rico. I have very little faith that this team is going to pull this off. I'm sorry. And if that makes me ultra negative, what could I tell you? This team has had a wonderful season. They've responded to adversity, all that jazz. But these two games, the Atlanta game and what we saw tonight, I'm sorry, Pete. It's very tough to be exuding confidence.
Yeah, it's typical. I hate to say it because this season's been going so great, and I want to believe this team. I think they're resilient enough to come back, but they have to prove it now. These are the money makers, man. This is the time that they actually have to show up and do more. Like, I'm sorry, but like giving up a grand slam to Rhys Hoskins, like you could sit there and say like it's typical. You expected it. You can't expect it anymore, man. This team's got to be better than that. And you know, it looks like this is the worst time that the team is like feeling the pressure. Alvy, everybody getting a little stressed, getting a little pinched. It's just bad timing. And on Alvy, by the way, Alvy, I'm not sure if he's going to come back to see day to day. He's going to look at him tomorrow. They said he's already walking around feeling better, acting like he's walking around better. But the reality is, you said it. They probably have to bring in a catcher.
Yeah, the positive with a back is the same as the negative with a back. You never know. I mean, sometimes that spasm can go away very, very quickly. I think the Mets either way have to make a phone call just to make sure that they've got someone in Milwaukee in case they need to activate a third catcher. They could always not IL Alvarez. They could always DFA Eddie Alvarez, who doesn't really have a very important role right now, and add a catcher that way, just so that they have a third catcher on the roster and not lose Francisco Alvarez. But it didn't look good. I agree with you about that. It didn't look good. Let me get to some of your emails. They're obviously overwhelmingly negative. I'm just going to warn people. So don't get mad, Evan. Why are you only reading negative emails? Literally, they're all pissed off Met fans. I mean, can you blame us? Let's start with Dan. Dan, which team had nothing to play for again? Now that Gary has put the topper on this shit cake, all I kept hearing was that the Brewers weren't going to try. I thought the same thing. See, I mentioned that earlier. And it was basically just a matter of if we're going to get enough to help clinch this weekend, because it was such a foregone conclusion that they were going to lay down. Gary even opened up the broadcast talking about how if they were going to even care enough to steal bases. Well, that aged well. Within 5 minutes, they looked like one team had clinched and the other was autopiloting through the weekend. And one was playing for their playoff lives. I'll let you guys figure out who was who. Not to mention one of the franchise cornerstones setting the tone by swinging 3-0 after not even sniffing a hit this past 7 at-bats, then striking out twice. Your crypt keeper DH, who's 0 for his last 85, rolling out a double play ball that was so tailor-made it didn't matter how many times they kicked it around. And I know, Evan, you like Acuna off the bench, but this team needs his youth and energy in there. DH Lindor, because he seems like he's a little compromised in the field. We don't need to see any more of Winker or the old man. And don't even get me started on the 8-year contract man, Brandon Nimmo, whose best contribution has been screaming at everyone to pack Citi Field last week. So maybe we should stop talking about seeding or who you'd rather play in the wild card or setting up the playoff rotation, because if you've been a fan of this team for any amount of time, you should know better. Yeah. So besides all of that, let's address the Acuna thing. This is going to be a day-to-day thing. When you're in a pennant race like this, you're going day-to-day on hot hand versus matchups versus feel. I do like Acuna off the bench. A part of why I like him off the bench is just in case Francisco Lindor can't get through a full game. It looked like he was actually going to come out of this game before he talked his way into staying in to get another at-bat. You are right. If he's going to play, he should be the DH. The more I think about this, like one idea is, well, I'm sorry, Lindor should be the DH. Let me just correct myself on that. And that's what Dan said. I agree with you. Because if Lindor is at shortstop and Acuna is DHing and Lindor has any kind of setback, you're not losing the DH spot. So that doesn't make sense. Putting Acuna at a position like second base or center field that he's only played 30 times in the minor leagues, I don't care how good he looks, poses a major risk. So because the Mets don't have an obvious DH right now, especially with J.D. Martinez approaching Ray Ordonez's team record for the longest offer by a position player, that would be the place to play him. And it's not crazy, because where else are you going to go? That's the other thing you got to think about. Where else are you going to go right now? Like, I still kind of want to play Tyrone Taylor. I know he had a quieter offensive game, but he's played so well in September. I'm not necessarily willing to kind of throw him off now and say I'm not going to play Tyrone Taylor. So I still want him out there. There is a part of me intrigued by Harrison Bader just because, can he get hot? He does give you the great defense in the outfield. Can he get hot? There's no great answer to this, but I am starting to warm up to the idea of, I thought Kyle Higashioka had delivered a big hit for the Padres. I'm watching the Padre Diamondback game. It's 5-3 Padres in the top of the 8th inning. I got to get used to doing like these live watches, because our plan for WFAN on Monday, assuming those games matter, is we are going to have, and I hope you tune in, a live watch party with all of you during the game. We're not going to ignore the game. We're not going to counter program the game. We're going to talk all about the game, as well as the Jets and the Broncos and other sports stuff. But we will keep you posted so you can watch the game and listen to us if you so choose. So maybe this is like good practice for me right now. Padres are up 5-3. They're trying to add some runs in the 8th inning. They got 2 guys on base. Luis Ariz is on deck, but Kyle Higashioka trying to give the Padres some insurance runs. I tell you, the lineup decisions, though, do give me a headache. And I think a part of why it's so difficult to have a strong opinion right now is who the hell do you trust? Like, I don't know. And also, the Brewers, as of yet, haven't announced who's starting tomorrow. Now, granted, their entire rotation is right-handed, so think about it that way. But I'll tell you, the J.D. Martinez, after he hit that double play ball, I thought, all right, hit the ball hard. Maybe this will lead to something. He said he figured something out offensively. For him to respond with a strikeout and a little pop-up that actually turned into an error was very discouraging. Do you keep him on the bench late in the game, pinch hit for Luis Torrens, especially if he's your starting catcher? I got no problem with that because he's a better option than Torrens if you're in that kind of desperation spot. Higashioka stroked one to very deep left field, but unfortunately it was caught right in front of the fence by Lourdes Gurriel. So the Padres lead the Diamondbacks 5-3 bottom of the 8th inning. That's going to end badly too. Yeah, I could just feel it now. The Diamondbacks are going to have some kind of, that would piss me off. Because again, what's on the line right now? If the Diamondbacks come back and win and everything stays the same, the Mets would be set up on Monday to have to win twice in Atlanta against the Braves. Twice. If the Diamondbacks lose this game to the Padres, then if the Mets can hold serve, they would be in a spot where they only have to win once on Monday. That's why it's so damn important. Now, let me get back to some more of your emails because they're very entertaining. They make me feel better because it makes me realize we're all a bunch of miserable bastards. All of us. Yeah, we're all weird in our own way. Steven writes, add Rhys Hoskins to the Pat Burrell realm. Rhys is not on the Mount Rushmore of Met killers yet, but he's like a Brian Jordan in the fact that you can change his jersey, but a killer is a killer. And we all know a Met killer when we see one. You called it. The season ain't over yet, but I feel like this game might be. Well, he was right about this game being over. It certainly was. Brett Tyson writes, it's May again. It just hit me tonight that they've turned back into the May 2024 Mets at the worst possible time. The following criticisms apply to all except for 3 guys, Jose Iglesias, Mark Vientos, and Tyrone Taylor. Ineffective starting pitching, replete with walking guys, unable to last 4. The complete inability to stop the running game has returned, as has the bad defense. Lifeless, meek offense, unable to work count. Bullpen like a sieve, simply unable to put up zeros. Pete looking at fastballs over the plate and chasing sliders off the plate. Oh, wait, that's not just from June. That's been happening nonstop all year. Lindor is clearly compromised. Putting him in for Acuna may actually be harming them. This is as bad as any of us feared, and unless they immediately turn into the June Mets, we will get a new set of scars, still hoping for a miracle. So the Lindor thing, we obviously talked about the idea of DHing Lindor and having Acuna at shortstop, because then if Lindor comes out of the game because of his back issues, it's certainly less complicated. You're not replacing him at shortstop. I think what's difficult about that is Francisco Lindor is the captain of this team. He wants to play shortstop. And I know you're the manager of the team. You just tell him what you want, and he's got to listen. But he has been the MVP candidate of this team all year. It's easier said than done to basically tell Francisco Lindor, you're healthy enough to come back, but we're not going to play you at shortstop. So it's tough. It's complicated because I do understand the idea of having that kind of youth of Acuna being out there. What else did he say that I was going to comment on? That's really it. Thank you. Let's hear from Howard. Howard writes, it's clear that Francisco Alvarez is unplayable as a catcher. Milwaukee will knock us out with him back there. He cannot play. And then he goes through all the bad plays Alvarez had. Well, guess what? He's hurt. We may not have to worry about it, right? Boy, oh my God, like 10 emails in a row about Francisco Alvarez sucking. How about this one? Sean writes, the season is over. They're cooked. Is it just me, or could everyone see the first inning coming from a mile away? They are dull, lifeless, and scared. This is comical how bad they are right now. I actually can't imagine them looking worse. They're completely terrified. I am so tired of hearing this team is different. Bullshit. It's the same script over and over again. Our best players fold in the big moments, and every other team's players thrive in those moments. It's so tiring. This is worse than fizzling out in July or August. This is typical Mets. Build us up, give us hope, and then disappear in spectacular fashion. Tonight, all but assured they'll have to win at least one game in Atlanta, and I, for one, will bet my mortgage that they won't even compete in those games because we all know the script and it will never change. But I'll still go to Monday to get my heart ripped out in person. There you go. Hey, listen, if you have a chance to go to Atlanta, you should, even though you probably know it's going to end terribly. I should end with something positive. I feel like this is just so depressing. But honestly, it's very tough to be positive. It is. And he's right. I have heard for so long how it's different. This is different from 2022. Well, remember, things are different until they're not different. And right now, it's not different. So the Mets will play Saturday. As Pete Hoffman told us, Jose Quintana will be on the mound. That game will start a little bit earlier. It's a 7:10 first pitch because we have to listen to the Fox announcers, which is so horribly depressing. That makes me think, Pete, should we do a live alternate broadcast? Maybe that's what we should do. We should eliminate the possibilities of listening to Fox and do a 3-hour Rico during that game.
I mean, it's not the worst idea in the world. And I think that most people will. We actually might break numbers. We might actually break our own YouTube numbers.
All right. How about this? Let's consider the possibility. Let's consider it. Let's wake up tomorrow, see how we all feel, and maybe we'll do it. You know what? If you want us to do a live Rico watch party to kind of get ready for what I'm probably going to have to do on WFN on Monday, it's almost like a warm-up, if you will, then drop us a line at thericob@gmail.com and tell us that's what you want, and we'll consider doing it. If we don't do it, don't worry. We'll obviously be on right after the game to react, and certainly by Saturday night, late Saturday night, we'll have a much better idea of all the scenarios. I think even now with the Braves winning, the Mets losing late in the Arizona-San Diego game, it's still complicated. I think once we get to Saturday night and there's only one game left before Monday, we'll certainly have a much clearer picture on what's in store for us. But Met fans, try to get some sleep. It's not over yet, even if deep down we know it's probably over.
Oh, stop it. You're right.
Stop it. You're right. Thank you.
I just don't want to hear it just yet. Like, give it to Monday for that. One shameless plug because I am doing it, dude. I got it. We're gonna talk Mets obviously on air, but the Knicks trade we're gonna be talking about. So once this is over, in about 5 minutes, I'm hopping on WFAN. We got Ian Begley at 1:00, so definitely tune in.
Yes, definitely. I'm very curious to hear everybody's opinion on the New York Knicks trade. Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, plus a first-round pick for Karl Anthony Towns, who is soft as what was I going to say? Toilet paper. No, that's kind of mean. Soft as tissue paper. That's a lot better. That's a much better thing to say.
If he's softer than tissue paper, what was Ben Simmons?
What does that have to do with anything?
I'm saying.
You guys are the worst. Anytime I say anything about the Knicks, I gotta get attacked by my garbage basketball team. I didn't say anything about my team. They suck. Trust me. You don't think I know? I know better than anybody how bad they are. Hold on one second. Let's make that play. So the Diamondbacks are losing 5-3 after 8. So the Padres are 3 outs away from securing that victory. Anyhow, we appreciate you downloading, subscribing, listening, watching, whatever the hell you do with another edition, a very unhappy edition, a very depressed edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.